Extreme sexual tension.
Really?
Well, yeah.
Hollywood, a land where unknown faces can become legends, but also where the brightest stars can be dimmed in the blink of an eye. And few know this better than Debra Winger, a three-time Oscar nominee, a fierce talent, and yet, mysteriously abandoned by the very industry that once adored her. What's even more shocking is that she didn't fall victim to scandal, addiction, or criminal behavior. No, her downfall came simply because of her unfiltered honesty and unyielding personality, traits that Hollywood, especially back then, just couldn't handle in a female actress. But there's more, far more. Debra faced a personal crisis unlike any other. A devastating brain hemorrhage that left her blind, paralyzed on one side, and facing the terrifying possibility of never stepping in front of a camera again. Yet, she rose from the ashes, making a miraculous comeback, conquering the world once more, only to vanish without a trace when she was at the peak of her career. Now, after nearly 30 years away from the spotlight, Debra has returned, transformed in ways that have shocked her fans and left the world wondering, why did she really leave? What has she endured? And why is her appearance now leaving everyone in disbelief? This isn't just the story of a brilliant star's rise and fall. It's a tale of heartbreak, resilience, and a woman who refused to be broken by Hollywood's unforgiving nature. Brace yourself, because the journey you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about Tinseltown. Mary Debra Winger was born on May 16, 1955, in Cleveland, Ohio, into a Jewish family with deep roots in Austria-Hungary and the Russian Empire. From the very start, she lived in the space between two worlds. Her maternal grandparents called her Mary, a name rooted in Jewish tradition, but her parents named her Debra, inspired by the famous Hollywood actress, Deborah Paget. Two names, two worlds, two paths. It was a constant tug-of-war between honoring family legacy and pursuing a dream of artistic freedom. When she was 5, her family moved to California, hoping for a quiet, conventional life. But within young Debra, there was a different fire, a burning ambition to one day step onto the stage. However, in her conservative Jewish household, acting wasn't seen as a viable career. Her dreams remained unspoken, buried deep within her, as she practiced in front of mirrors and studied classic films in silence, teaching herself the craft. Despite her passion for performance, Debra was an exceptional student, skipping grades and graduating high school at just 15, years younger than most of her peers. Yet, instead of chasing the spotlight, she followed a more traditional path, enrolling in college to study criminology. Before turning 17, she even worked part-time at an amusement park in California, yet her true dreams were always just out of reach. For now, it was supposed to be just another ordinary day. At least, that's what Debra Winger thought. She had been assigned to operate a small truck, transporting props for a Christmas play. But then, disaster struck. A valuable costume slipped off the truck. Instinctively, she reached out to grab it, but in that split second, the driver swerved, violently throwing her from the vehicle. Darkness took over. When Debra finally opened her eyes, she found herself in a hospital bed. Her body felt foreign. One side was completely unresponsive. Her sight was gone. The doctors had delivered the grim diagnosis: severe brain trauma, hemorrhaging that caused temporary blindness and partial paralysis. Weeks turned into months. The world around her remained shrouded in darkness, and helplessness consumed her. The doctors couldn't promise she would ever recover fully. She might never see again. She might never walk again. But perhaps the most terrifying thing wasn't her loss of sight or mobility, it was the loss of her dream. During those long, agonizing days, Debra had nothing but time to think. What if she couldn't walk again? What if she couldn't see again? What if her life had come to an end? For the first time, she realized something she had never dared to face before. She didn't want to live an ordinary life. And then, one fateful day, she made a decision that would change everything. If she could walk again, if she could see again, she swore to give up everything for her dream of acting. It wasn't just a promise, it was an oath, an unbreakable vow she made to herself, and to the universe. Miraculously, against all medical odds, Debra began to recover. Her vision slowly returned, her body regained movement, but she was no longer the same. She wasn't the girl who had walked into that hospital. Debra left her college studies behind. She abandoned the stable life her family had envisioned for her. And, with everything she had, she threw herself into Hollywood. It wasn't just ambition that drove her, it was survival. Debra Winger entered Hollywood like a warrior who had escaped death. So how did she land her first role? How did she transform from an unknown to one of Hollywood's brightest stars? Stick around to find out, because the journey is just getting started. Like many aspiring actors, Debra initially struggled to find her place. She began with minor television roles, the most memorable being Diana's younger sister in Wonder Woman, 1975. But her big break didn't come from TV. It came from a film she'd rather forget. In 1976, Debra took a role in Slumber Party 57, a soft-core exploitation film she viewed as little more than a way to pay the bills. It wasn't a choice. It was a bitter necessity for a young actress desperate for work. Years later, when Debra found fame, she dodged every question about the film. In an interview on Inside the Actors Studio, when asked about her first film, she remained silent, refusing to answer. Debra never denied her past, but she certainly never wanted to revisit it. Debra Winger didn't come to Hollywood to be just another pretty face or a cheap symbol. She came to prove that she was a real actress, someone with depth, range, and power. Her early films, Thank God It's Friday, 1978, and French Postcards, 1979, didn't do much to push her career forward. She remained a fleeting face, a name that didn't stick. Hollywood saw her as too strong, too sharp-edged, far from the delicate, passive female leads the industry adored. But Debra wasn't ready to back down. She knew that all it would take was one chance for Hollywood to finally see her for what she truly was. And that chance came in the most unexpected way. In 1980, Urban Cowboy, a film that would go on to redefine the modern cowboy genre, was searching for its female lead. Initially, the role was meant for Sissy Spacek, but the Carrie, 1976, star turned it down. Hollywood then turned to Michelle Pfeiffer, an unknown face at the time, to audition. But it was Debra Winger who would walk in and steal the show. She wasn't the first choice. She wasn't the second or third. But she had something no one else did. Raw intensity, a wild energy, and an untamed presence that made her impossible to ignore. Director James Bridges saw that potential and was so convinced she was the one that he threatened to walk away from the film unless the studio cast her. Hollywood may not have believed in Debra Winger, but James Bridges did. And when Urban Cowboy hit theaters, Winger made Hollywood sit up and take notice. She didn't just act, she became the character. She wasn't just John Travolta's love interest, she became America's newest sex symbol. But more importantly, she proved she was a force to be reckoned with. Hollywood had always been filled with beautiful women, but how many could make audiences feel every glance, every movement, every line of dialogue the way Debra Winger did? The success of Urban Cowboy didn't just save her career, it gave her something few actresses in Hollywood ever had: control over her own destiny. With that strength came resistance from the industry itself. Enter the golden era of Debra Winger, a time when she didn't just reach the top but sparked some of the fiercest battles of her career. After Urban Cowboy, she quickly became one of the most sought-after actresses in Hollywood, not just for her raw beauty, but for her fearless, hauntingly real performances. She wasn't some fairy tale princess, she was a storm ready to tear through every boundary. But with every film that elevated her career, the battles behind the scenes became fiercer, earning her a reputation as one of the most controversial figures in the industry. In 1982, Debra starred in An Officer and a Gentleman, a film that pushed her even further into Hollywood stardom. The iconic image of Richard Gere carrying her out of the factory in his Navy uniform became one of the most romantic moments in cinematic history. But that romance, it was pure fiction. In reality, Debra and Gere couldn't stand each other, and their on-screen chemistry was anything but friendly. Debra Winger once famously described acting alongside Richard Gere as performing opposite a brick wall. There was no chemistry, no connection. Every day on set felt like an unspoken war. Despite An Officer and a Gentleman becoming a massive success and earning her first Oscar nomination, the film also cemented her reputation as difficult, headstrong, and brutally honest, traits that, in Hollywood, often led to alienation. But if her tension with Gere was simply the clash of two actors who didn't get along, what happened on the set of Terms of Endearment, 1983, was a full-blown battle. This time, the conflict wasn't with a male co-star, it was with a Hollywood legend, Shirley MacLaine. MacLaine, an icon of old Hollywood, stood in stark contrast to Winger, the rebellious force of a new generation. MacLaine's presence was unshakable, while Winger shattered every convention that came her way. When these two strong-willed women collided, it was like two storms crashing into each other. They fought over everything, from acting styles to on-set professionalism. The tension reached a boiling point when, in a moment of reckless defiance, Winger reportedly farted in front of MacLaine, declaring it her mark on the set. In the end, Terms of Endearment became a masterpiece, earning Winger her second Oscar nomination. But the win went to Shirley MacLaine. As she accepted her award, she famously shouted, "I deserve this." Her statement, dripping with irony, seemed to assert victory not just on screen but in their real-life feud as well. Despite their animosity, one undeniable truth remained: the off-screen tension between them fueled a cinematic experience that moved millions. What most people don't know, however, is that in the same year, Debra Winger contributed to another legendary film in an unexpected way. She was the uncredited voice of E.T. in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1982. Steven Spielberg had invited her to test out the alien's voice, and although she accepted, Winger never publicly acknowledged it. Perhaps she didn't want to be known for a behind-the-scenes role. After all, Debra Winger was never one to settle for a background part. But that wild spirit, that refusal to conform, made Hollywood uneasy. She repeatedly turned down major roles that other actresses would have fought for. Rumors swirled that she passed up opportunities due to her romantic involvement with Nebraska Governor Bob Kerrey, a man with no ties to Hollywood, but a pull that was undeniably strong. Others speculated that health issues played a role in her decisions. Regardless of the reason, one thing was clear. Debra Winger was charting a path of her own, one few had the courage to follow. As the 1990s arrived, she continued to star in high-caliber films like The Sheltering Sky, 1990, and Shadowlands, 1993, the latter earning her a third Oscar nomination. But despite her undeniable talent, her shine in Hollywood began to dull. The industry, with its rigid expectations and ever-changing demands, no longer made room for a woman who refused to be tamed. And just when everyone thought Debra Winger would keep fighting for her place in Hollywood, she shocked the world. In 1995, at the height of her career, Winger made the boldest decision of all. She walked away from Hollywood. No scandals, no controversies, just silence. Why would a brilliant actress, someone who had shaken Hollywood to its core, simply vanish at the peak of her success? Was this the downfall of a woman cast aside by an unforgiving industry? Or was it the defiant move of a rebel who refused to be controlled? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking truth behind Debra Winger's decision to leave it all behind. Debra Winger wasn't just a fiercely independent actress on screen. Her real-life journey was just as turbulent. Her two marriages, one a whirlwind of passion and heartbreak, the other a rare sanctuary of lasting peace, mirrored the two starkly different phases of her life. Her relationship with Timothy Hutton wasn't just another Hollywood love story. It was a series of fated encounters, electric moments, and inevitable collapse. In 1981, as her career soared after the success of Urban Cowboy, Winger casually turned on the TV and watched a young, vibrant man accepting an Oscar for Ordinary People, 1980. That was Timothy Hutton, only 20 years old. In that instant, she felt an undeniable pull toward him, but little did she know that it would take years before their paths would truly cross. They first met in 1983, when both were considered for roles in the film Roadshow. From the moment their eyes locked, an overwhelming energy surged between them, a connection so intense, it left them both unsettled. They talked for hours, yet afterward, they avoided each other. Every 6 months, fate threw them together again at Hollywood events. Each time, sparks flew, only to fade just as quickly. But on New Year's Eve of 1986, fate intervened once more. Winger was hosting the Farm Aid charity event, and Hutton was a guest. This time, they stopped running from their connection. 3 months later, they were married, believing they had found their forever. But just when happiness seemed within reach, tragedy struck on their wedding night. Winger became pregnant almost immediately, but soon after, she suffered a heartbreaking miscarriage. From the euphoria of newfound love, she was plunged into a deep abyss of grief. The physical and emotional pain of that loss scarred her in ways she would never forget. Yet, life had other plans. Winger became pregnant again, and in 1987, she gave birth to their son, Noah Hutton. But even the joy of motherhood couldn't save their marriage. On the surface, Winger and Hutton seemed like the perfect couple, but beneath that facade, cracks had already started to appear. They loved each other, but they were too different. Winger, untamed and impulsive, and Hutton, sensitive and introspective, couldn't seem to reconcile their differences. Everything worsened when Winger's Orthodox Jewish grandmother disowned her for marrying outside their faith. The disapproval from her family only pushed the marriage further toward a dead end. In 1988, Winger and Hutton separated, and 2 years later, they officially divorced. But despite the end of their marriage, they never became enemies. A decade after their split, they were able to sit together again, even sharing Thanksgiving dinner with Winger's new husband. After the stormy marriage with Timothy Hutton, Winger no longer believed in passionate, fiery love. She needed something different, something that could endure. She found that in Arliss Howard, whom she met on the set of Wilder Napalm, 1993. It wasn't a grand, whirlwind romance, but a quiet understanding between two people who had seen enough of life. Howard wasn't a superstar like Richard Gere or a young prodigy like Hutton, but he had something that no one else could offer Winger: peace. They married in 1996, and a year later, their son, Gideon Babe Ruth Howard, was born. Howard also had a son from a previous marriage, whom Winger helped raise as her own. Unlike her first marriage, where intense emotions burned everything in their path. Her relationship with Howard was a slow-burning flame, steady and enduring. Still, Winger never claimed it was perfect. In a 2008 interview, she admitted, "A good marriage doesn't mean you're happy all the time. Happiness is fleeting, but I believe I chose the right person." After years of turmoil in both love and career, Debra Winger began to realize that she had changed. The demands of the film industry had exhausted her. She had fought not just with directors, producers, and co-stars, but also with the harsh realities of Hollywood's treatment of women. She refused to accept dull, lifeless roles, but she also knew she couldn't keep fighting forever. "I don't want to keep repeating what I've already done," she said. "If I'm not excited, I'd rather do nothing at all." Her on-set clashes with Richard Gere, Shirley MacLaine, and even powerful directors had earned her a reputation as difficult to work with. But Winger never cared about pleasing others. She only wanted to make meaningful films. And when she left Hollywood in 1995, it was her own decision, her own declaration of independence. By the mid-90s, Hollywood had started offering Debra Winger roles that felt uninspired, repetitive, and predictable, everything she didn't want. Hollywood's pressures were part of it, but the real reason was personal. After her failed marriage with Timothy Hutton, she realized that the pursuit of fame and success no longer held the same appeal. She no longer wanted to chase things that didn't bring her true happiness. When Winger met Alice Howard, she saw a different path, a life where she didn't have to fight every day to prove herself. In 1995, during a trip to Ireland with Howard, she stood in the middle of a vast, green field and had an epiphany. She realized that the acting career she had fought so hard for no longer fulfilled her. With no grand announcement, no dramatic press release, she made the decision quietly: "I'm done." She wasn't going to make movies anymore. When she returned to the US, Winger walked away from Hollywood without a single farewell party, press release, or headline. She and Howard moved to a farm in New York, away from the spotlight. It was there, on that farm, that she found something she had never known before: peace. Mornings without early call times, afternoons spent gardening, evenings with her family uninterrupted by work calls. To the outside world, it didn't make sense. A 3-time Oscar nominee, at the peak of her career, disappearing without scandal. But for Winger, it didn't matter. "I don't need Hollywood to know who I am." Was it truly the end of her story in cinema, or just the calm before the storm? After years of fighting an industry demanding conformity, Winger stepped away, rejecting roles that others would have fought for and standing up for herself and future generations of actresses. Today, when actresses like Jennifer Lawrence and Meryl Streep fight for equal pay and resist being typecast, they follow Winger's trail. In an era when Hollywood tried to fit women into narrow molds, Winger proved an actress could be bold, sharp, and still thrive. She didn't just turn down superficial roles, she demanded respect. Calling out directors like Taylor Hackford and producers like Don Simpson for belittling her, Winger stood up for all women in Hollywood, ensuring future generations wouldn't face the same discrimination. Her influence is undeniable. Actresses like Anne Hathaway and Cate Blanchett cite Winger as a key inspiration. Her departure from Hollywood became one of its greatest mysteries, but rather than fade into obscurity, she became a symbol of the industry's sexism and ageism. The 2002 documentary Searching for Debra Winger exposed Hollywood's mistreatment of women over 40, with Winger's absence serving as a powerful symbol for all women who dared to break free from the mold. Debra Winger was never a conventional Hollywood actress. She rejected perfection, embraced conflict, and never sought Hollywood's approval. This defiance made her an icon, a powerful advocate for female freedom in the arts. Today, when actresses fight for their rights and challenge outdated industry standards, they're walking the path Winger blazed. Although Winger stepped away from Hollywood, she will never be forgotten. At nearly 70, she is no longer a constant media presence, but when she does appear, she surprises. At the 2024 premiere of Drive Away Dolls in New York, the Hollywood sex symbol was gone. Instead, Winger embraced her natural silver curls, wearing a simple black blazer, trousers, and a patterned scarf. A minimal makeup and serene confidence showed the strength of a woman who no longer chased youth. Winger has lived on her own terms, becoming an even greater symbol of strength and defiance. The woman who rejected Hollywood's mold, walked away from fame, and fought for future generations of women has left an indelible mark on the industry. Though she's distanced herself from the Hollywood spotlight, Winger's passion for the arts endures. She made a remarkable return in 2016, playing Maggie Bennett in The Ranch on Netflix, bringing emotional depth to her role. She continued with Mr. Corman, 2021, and Accused, 2023, each performance showing her depth and authenticity. While she avoids flashy roles, Every part she takes on is filled with undeniable presence. Debra Winger's shift from Hollywood was a conscious choice, not a retreat. In indie films like The Lovers, 2017, and Kajillionaire, 2020, and TV roles in The Ranch, 2016, and Mr. Corman, 2021, she chose roles that offered meaning, not fame. Winger's brilliance lies in carving her own path, never chasing validation or conforming to Hollywood's mold. Her legacy isn't just acting. She became a symbol of defiance against Hollywood's narrow standards. Winger's refusal to conform and her fight for meaningful roles made her an icon of independence and resilience. When Hollywood no longer offered what she craved, she walked away, choosing a life on her own terms. Was it a sacrifice or a triumph? Hollywood may have moved on, but Winger's impact remains. Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of legends who lived on their own terms.